there's a reason why gossip exists, to try to align yourself and warn people about certain things, as long as it's rooted in honesty and like it's a shared discussion. So this isn't like, this could be construed as gossip, but these are facts of the matter that I'm just trying to unpack. And even now I feel a little weird because there's certain people that come around that I know were a part of a conversation with this particular person. And I find myself now trying to get ahead of these conversations.
Got it.
And in an effort to get ahead of it, not just leading with like who I am and doubling down on that, more of also with that conversation, having to point out who this other person is.
I'm Antonio Zanalato.
And I am your co-host, Jacob Saldana.
And I'm here to serve men who are seeking more out of their life and themselves, men who are ready to dive deeper and do the work. In this podcast, we will help increase your curiosity in order to live more of an examined life,
to live with integrity for yourself and others,
and to accept the things in life that you can control. Our goal is to help you bring out the warrior within you. Welcome to the Warrior Lab.
Welcome back to another episode of the Warrior Lab. Checking in, Jacob Saldana.
What up, Jacob? Antonio Zanalato.
All right. Well, today's topic of discussion is going to be something I'm dealing with personally. And I think we are all going to continue to deal with as long as we are trying to do work, as long as we out here in the marketplace trying to do big things. So the topic is going to be around this idea of like trying to work on yourself, trying to change who you are, or develop who you are. And sometimes it's even manifest with like people that are really close to you, right? That are trying to hold you back. So in my particular situation right now, it's around people kind of talking shit, things that might not be true. In my case, they aren't true. I know for 100% facts, but it doesn't make it any easier. You work so hard to try to establish yourself as, a good person who's generous, who's caring. And then for whatever reason, there's going to be somebody that might be trying to sabotage that for you for whatever reason, right? So that's something I'm personally experiencing with. And I'm trying not to take it too seriously, but at the same time, I've worked really hard to be the person that I am. And I've taken a lot of risks to establish these small businesses. And, whether that's capital or whatever, that's time, that's energy, that's, an emotional input, to have somebody kind of try to drag that through the mud for no other reason than their shit isn't something that I can take too lightly. It's not something you can just sweep under the rug because there's a lot of things at stake. And I guess in this particular situation, since I know it's not true, it doesn't really stop there because the people that don't know me don't necessarily know it to be true. So I guess the topic of this episode is going to be around that, how to deal with people that are either just haters, family members that might be seeing you change, that don't necessarily want the best for you in that sense, because that means that they might have to step up and change, because you're going to embrace some of it, or you're going to face some of that stuff when you step into making changes for yourself. So what's your take on, I guess, some of that, all of that? Where are you at with the shit talking?
Yeah, so, a few things there. The first thing it pops up to me right away is change. Right? I used to use that word a lot, but I noticed that the language got in the way of me actually progressing, because
was it before and after, one
way or the change in itself entails, if I need a change, it means that something is wrong with me as I stand, right? So I remove the word change, I replace it with improvement.
Or transition,
transformation, right? So I am all as I stand right now. However, I can always improve upon. right? So the language is changing the language. Now it gives me a lot more power, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm going from being defected, from being um, broken, now to being all, and with the possibility of always being able to improve upon.
Yeah. Makes
So
sense.
that's my first invite to you and the people out there. There is nothing wrong with any of you. There is improvement that any of us can make, and that's a lot more powerful. Um, Second, you know, touching on your sharing, yes, you will always have people that will try to benefit from shedding a bad light on you, right? And usually those people are people who are insecure, people who are dealing with their own lack of confidence, lack of worthiness, and are trying to bring you down to their same level, even lower step below, so they can make themselves feel good.
Yeah. I mean, in this particular like scenario, like what's really frustrating is that it's just these reoccurring lies in order to like get ahead of this. So this particular girl like tells a lot of lies, right? And like that's ultimately why we parted ways in whatever capacity she was around at, right? And in order to kind of get ahead of that, she's going and somewhat talking, you know, just again saying things that aren't necessarily true about the way we're running our business and like who we are as people. And it's easy for me to say, oh, it doesn't matter. Like this girl has no credibility whatsoever. It doesn't matter. And the reason why I think ultimately I'm hanging on to this and I'm more worried about it than I should be is again envisioning the people she's talking to that don't necessarily know me. They don't know what I stand for, the values that I have, right? And even in that sense, I could still be like, oh, that shouldn't really matter, because if they do step in here or to any of my businesses or get to know me, they're going to see real quickly that none of that was true. So this is, I think, why I'm hanging on to it more, is because when this particular person came into my world, she did the exact same thing that I know now she's doing. So I know firsthand what that looks like, of what she most likely is saying, because she came into me talking equal amount of shit about another place or another establishment. And I just so happened to kind of take all that in, because those are things that I kind of wanted to hear in that moment. Because it's not necessarily, it was a business that was competing with us, but it was kind of in our same realm. So, you know, as a weak moment for myself and to make myself feel better about what business I'm running and who I am and what I'm doing, I was real quickly to latch onto this idea that somebody else is shady or whatever it was. So I felt better. So I soaked all that in and I took that more to heart, to the point where I saw myself repeating some of the shit that she was talking. And now that I know, which I probably knew then, I was choosing to believe that it was true. And I kind of knew that it probably wasn't. And even repeating some of those stories to others. Right. So that's what I know could potentially be happening as this person's talking shit.
So as you're sharing this, what's the primarily feeling that comes up for you?
So my area of opportunity there was to, one, be more stoic with the information that I was receiving and not feel like I had to go and repeat any of that. And two, not be so shallow in the sense that I needed to be uplifted by other people that were potentially not operating within my value set, right? That shouldn't have made me feel good.
Would you agree with me that if your response to her introduction would have been different, in a way of not buying or being more, like you say, more stoic, more objective, more indifferent, from that, right? You think she would have understood, she would have been felt in misalignment with who you are, and maybe, just maybe, enable her to show up in a different way around you and your business.
Yeah,
because you pretty much, what I'm hearing is that you aligned yourself as a person, right, by the way you responded to that, with the same person who were running the previous the business she was coming from.
Yeah. So I think for this particular person, I don't think it would have changed much. I think there's
probably
issues
right
there. Like, but I know exactly what you're saying. So hypothetically, had I been more indifferent to it, my reaction wouldn't have fed her more, right? So she was getting this positive reinforcement as being like a very dramatic, drama-filled person who tells a lot of lies. Like, oh, I'm getting positive feedback here. I'm getting what I need. I found an ally in this narrative, and I'm going to continue to do that, right? Had I just been like, oh, hey, like, because my actions didn't quite line up with what I was saying, because I remember that first conversation, and I remembered, making it very clear to her that, we've been through the gauntlet over here in Pasadena at Space Bar and Lifted with opening up just, a couple weeks to the before the pandemic, right? So like this entire history that we have here has been a grind. I think that's another reason why it's like, dude, like I've worked so hard for this, and now this person is gonna sabotage me. Anyways, but I made a really clear point when we first met. Like we've gotten through this grind thus far with like no drama. So I was verbally saying, hey, I cannot have drama here. Like the squad has been solid.
You were showing up. You were showing up.
I was like, hey, oh, this is kind of exciting. This shit talking is kind of, when it's about somebody else, so had that. But again, this particular person, I think had a few screws.
Would you say that there is a little bit of resentment on your end?
Oh, definitely. 100%.
Where you show up in not, being in integrity.
Definitely. Yeah.
With, what you were preaching, and now you were showing up. They were not in alignment.
Definitely. I mean, and even so, even talking about it now feels a little out of alignment of the person that I really want to be. But then I do get I do appreciate these conversations and talking about them, because there's a reason why gossip exists. To try to align yourself and warn people about certain things, as long as it's rooted in honesty and like it's a shared discussion. So this isn't like, this could be construed as gossip, but these are facts of the matter that I'm just trying to unpack. And even now I feel a little weird because there's certain people that come around that I know were a part of a conversation with this particular person. And I find myself now trying to get ahead of these conversations.
Got it.
And in an effort to get ahead of it, not just leading with like who I am and doubling down on that, more of also with that conversation, having to point out who this other person is, in somewhat of an effort to protect this other person too, or these other people that this person has been around, because it's a very toxic, like illegal, like fraudulent type of behavior, right? So like giving these people a heads up, one, give them a heads up, and two, to be like, hey, like we're on the same side here. This person is fraudulent. Beware.
Are you really doing it for the other people, or you are doing it for yourself?
Myself, the other people, just to try to get ahead of that, because what do I not say anything? And just know, because I mean?
No, what I'm saying, I'm not questioning you saying something. I'm questioning what's the motive behind. I'm not really questioning. I'm inviting you to kind of shed a light on the motive behind.
More so to cover my ass,
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, probably.
So you're doing more of what led you.
More to cover my ass.
Yeah,
sure.
But you're doing more of what led you. So you're just doing more of what led you there in the first place. I'm challenging you here.
Yeah, but so that's what I'm saying. Yeah, but because again, even in that, I feel a little like weird doing it, only because, I don't know. Because I am, because I don't want it to come across as talking shit, just for no reason. And I guess there is a reason why I want to get ahead of it, because I'm trying to cover my ass. I'm trying to maintain my reputation.
So what I'm saying here, Jacob, is like the only reason why there is a little bit of concern around what she can do out there to contaminate your, how you say, your space, contaminate your persona, is because you probably would agree with me. You were in misalignment when she came into your business. You were in misalignment with the person that you wanted to be, the person you wanted to show up as, right? So now there is a little bit of sentiment, there's a little bit of shame around that. And so with her now being wild and be able to share that with others, so that's why probably you're feeling the way you're feeling. So there is a little bit of, there is like, yeah, maybe I didn't show up in a very powerful way around this person, and now she's taking that, whatever that is, which is true, and some of it's true, and spreading it with the word.
Yeah, and in perfect like fashion for myself. Like I'm probably sharing more than what she even knows. So like, as I say, like I was receptive of the shit talking. It was just more of like an internal reception of it. Like I wasn't like, oh yeah, rallying behind and then talking shit. You know what I mean? It was more of an internal thing. But had I just shut that down right from the jump and been like, oh no, this is a person who's just talking like mad shit. I don't need them here. That's when I look back into like what I could have done differently. I should have done that and just like nip that in the butt like real quick. But instead it was more of an internal feeling of like feeling just good about that, you know, versus not needing that, you know, and shutting that down.
Yes.
So I'm not looking back at it, you know, with like, I should be embarrassed with the way that I acted, because I was again outwardly facing pretty dialed in there. It's just more of internally like playing that a little bit, like, man, like why, you know, why do I feel the need to have somebody else to do worse for me to do better? You know what I mean? Like that always, she
pretty much won you over.
And then I start unpacking it, be like, man, was this girl just like really smart? Like really, like a psychopath to the level of like really smart? Like, did she know how to play that game?
I think subconsciously she knows. She doesn't have awareness around that. But people who are chronic liars subconsciously know what to say and when to say it in order to win the other person over.
Yeah, because I mean, I knew like everything this girl said was a lie, and it was just like interesting, you know, why, you know, where was the initial interaction and why I even let any of that slide? Because you know, I was just like, whatever, she's just a young girl and she's just telling these lies to feel better about herself, and I know not any of it's true. But why was I even okay with that being around at all? You know what I mean?
Probably it was convenient for you. You need a body. You need a body there. Need a body there, and it wasn't necessarily arming anything or anyone. And so you let it slide.
That's the lesson there, until it is, right. And it's like those weren't things that I needed to be surrounded by. So it did become very problematic, you know. And it was I should have just got ahead of it from the jump. You know what I mean? So that's one way that kind of shows up. The other way that I think within this realm of things is being on that self-development path and trying to make changes, and being, you know, having, say, your partner not necessarily being on that path, and then not necessarily directly talking shit to you, but not giving you the space to change, to transition into this new version of yourself. So that becomes some sabotaging behavior there. Have you noticed that ever show up in your life?
Run it by me one more time.
Say you have this group of friends, right? And you want to give up drinking because whatever reason, right? It's not serving you. Rather than friends being supportive of that, they're either going to like try to be like, come on, dude, it's just one drink, like just have one drink. Right. So that's a version of that. So as you try to distance yourself from past behaviors that are holding you back, some of the closest people around you are going to kind of wave that in front of you when you're thinking like, oh, these should be the people that are supportive of me. But in reality, they're making this transition even harder for me than it needs to be.
I get it. No, I understand what you're saying now. So I think it comes down to a very simple question. How bad do you want it? How bad do you really want it? You know what I mean? Going back to quitting drinking. How bad do you want it? Like, what's the trade-off of you not drinking? Is the trade-off the value that you are associating to that greater of the instant gratification of you drinking and getting out of whatever you're getting out of it?
Yeah.
Right? So it's the value that you are placing on that trade-off that is going to allow you to handle and navigate through those situations. And if you are surrounded by people who are not supporting you, granted that you share with them openly and clearly what your intentions are, right? Mm-hmm. If the people are not supporting you, and then maybe those are the wrong people that are in your life at that given time.
Yeah.
Right? You may have to remove yourself from that context, that surrounding, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And I think if people understood that this is a very common scenario, like going into these transitions, like prepare yourself. I think, again, us talking about this is going to hopefully give you a little bit more of a heads up of what to expect. It's very common for people that are close to you to not want you to change as an effort for them to keep their status quo, because if you're leveling up, think about how that's going to make this other person feel who's doesn't have any interest in leveling up or not ready to level up. They're going to see some distance being there,
Yeah, and I'm not going to allow that to dictate my trajectory, right? Because at that point, that was actually a thing for me, right? In my relationships, I was like, okay, my trajectory, it's going, it's upward. Why the person's or people around me trajectory is not necessarily parallel to mine. I'm not gonna slow down just so I can allow them to catch up with me.
Yeah.
Or, even worse, bring myself down so I don't make these people around me uncomfortable. I'm leveling up. The only reason why I'm doing that in the first place, it's for myself, nobody else. I'm doing that just for myself so I can show up as a better human being, as a better husband, as a better father, as a better friend, as a better business person, whatever that may be. I'm doing that just for me, not for anyone else. So that's to be clear that once you embrace, when you embrace this journey, you are doing it for yourself. You are not doing it for anyone else. You got to be clear with that, because otherwise you relinquish the power of the work to other people. And those people can easily take that away from you. So be clear with that. You are doing the work for yourself. So yes, if the person in your marriage, in your relationship, is not necessarily coming along with you, that's something you cannot be concerned with. If the time comes that something needs to happen in a relationship, and then so be it, but not be concerned as you're moving along. Do not make that a concern.
Yeah. And trust me, it's easier said than done. I mean,
definitely. Especially tell me. Yeah. In a marriage, right? Yeah. There is a commitment. Now I got myself there. Mm-hmm. I didn't just like someone put a gun on my head and say, you need to get married to so and so. I got myself there in the first place.
Yeah.
Right? All bunch of decision led me there. Decision that I made that led me there.
Yeah.
Two kids.
Yeah.
I'm not just gonna, if something would have happened where I'm like, okay, I'm here and my spouse is here, which is likely it's not the case. But if that would have been the case, I cannot just walk away because that marriage is not serving him anymore.
Yeah.
There is a commitment there that needs to be looked at it and say, okay, what needs to happen here in order where we can even level up here, we can meet halfway, or what is the route where of less, that will create less collateral damage.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a really big challenge for me to embrace that. So, even just before hopping on here, talking about like just doing things for myself, period, is probably one of my biggest challenges. There's so much wrapped into it, whether I have a tendency or a history of being a people pleaser or wanting to be liked or whatever it might be. Huge challenge for me with how that shows up. And even again, as we were talking about, me getting a workout in, me going to get a workout in for myself isn't a strong enough why for me attaching it to maybe building a strategic relationship with another business and going to get a workout in. Oh, now I can attach that to something outside of myself that now makes it worthwhile. So as far as a lot of development stuff goes, like even within my relationship, it's really easy for me to go, oh, I'm trying to make this change to be a better partner for Laura or to do this or do that. Right. And it's like the problem with that, and I fully understand what you're saying. And I 100% agree. It's just, it seems almost impossible for me to do that. Right. So again, what that prevents me from doing is if I needed quiet time or I wanted to go and do something for myself, I'm not going to go and just wake up early and go for that hike by myself because it's making me a better person. I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to do a lot of these things based off of the feedback that I'm getting from the people around me. In my case, my girlfriend, Laura. So if I'm making these changes that I know that are going to be improving who I am as a person, but I'm not the one that is judging whether that's enough, it's not going to keep me on that path.
You're allowing someone also to validate.
Right. Exactly.
So if the feedback you're getting from that person is not validating the work, you probably going to shy away from that
and be super frustrated. Right. So,
yes.
Because it is a lot of work. Right. And again, this is why I warn people and I let people know that this is a very common thing. And for one, if you're doing this change for the other person, they also know the other versions of yourself, the weaknesses of you. And just like we fixate on the negative and we don't give the positive nearly the weight that we do with the negative, think about all the negative things that you've proven to be true in their mind. So even though you've made changes in regards to not being so quick with your mouth and talking shit and having the whippy comeback all the time, and say you've improved on that 8 of the 10 times, you're no longer saying that like you did. But that one time you do say it, they're going to hit you with that, see, you haven't changed, because that's real for them because you haven't proven that to be the case. And now you're receiving, damn, I haven't changed, because the person that you're trying to change for isn't seeing it, because they're not going to see it as quick. Yeah, right.
It's kind of like timing washing the dishes when you know that your wife is walking in the house, right? Because you want to be validated. You want to be.
Have you done that before? So like that's a very accessible example for you there. Is that something you do?
Yeah.
I haven't done that.
I do. Yeah. I do. I probably not necessarily with the dishes,
I'm
but
do that tonight.
With other stuff, I'm sure I do it. Right. I make sure that my wife sees me working around the house. Right.
I like that.
Because I want that validation. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but. And going back to what I said, this type of work, it's a dichotomy, and let me explain you why. Because on one end, you're looking for validation, right, from other people to validate your work, validate your progress, your improvement. And then at the other end, you have that person who flags it. Look who I am. Look what I did. Look what I learned. Right? Right? And just like waving it, you know what I mean? Like a big ding dong in front of the other person's face.
Yeah.
Right? And pretty much telling the other person, I'm now better. I'm superior than you are. Right? So my recommendation here is it's a two-part. One being, when you embrace this work, embrace it with intention, the clear intention you're doing this for yourself, that you're doing this because you want to show up as a better human being, right? And as a more productive human being.
Yeah.
And the second component, be silent, in a sense, let your action talk. Be inspire, try to inspire and move the people around you just by the way you are showing up. Not what you're preaching, not what you're not with your sharings, but just by the way you show up. Let be that the invitation, the inspiration. Right? So be aware of those two components when you embrace the work. Because at first when I when I embraced personal growth, I was one of those guys that, hey, look what I learned. Right? Even though I wasn't living it, even though I wasn't practicing it. Yeah. Just so I could put myself at a higher, how you say,
level.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think in regards to any kind of transition and improvement, there needs to be some form of validation, and the goal is to be able to validate yourself.
Correct.
Right. And in order to do that, you gotta. I talked about this on another episode of mine where the gap in the gain.
Yes.
If you're constantly looking for the gap in how far you got to go, you're never going to really reflect on
the gain.
Exactly. And it's like, that's
how far you have come.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is a very real, all these things for me mold together, right? Mm-hmm. I don't focus on how far I've come, and therefore I don't validate my progress whatsoever. So of course, it just doesn't come natural to me. So there's so much of it is tied up in that. So point being is, again, bring awareness to this, recognize that might be happening in your life. And in an effort to find some shared some healthier validation as you build towards building the validation within yourself, find support systems, whether that is reaching out to a coach that knows what you're working on, knows where you're coming from, and kind of help pat you on the back when you're unwilling to do so. Find that resource for you. For us, it's been our men's group that we attend to a lot, right? And it's like, I still get very uncomfortable when they're validating how much progress I've made and how hard of a worker I am, because I don't give that to myself. I don't often get it from my partner either, because it becomes the norm. That's the expectation. Jacob's a hard worker, and therefore, of course, it gets taken for granted, or what appears to be taken for granted sometimes. I don't believe that to be fully true, but it sometimes comes across that way. So I think the big underlying message is, don't rely on the 19-year-old kid that comes in to validate you as being a good person. And when they start talking shit otherwise, don't let that take away from all the work that you've done. Don't let that be the support system that you're leaning on. Find a mentor, find a coach, find, a group of people that can be a little bit more impartial, still give it to you straight when you need it, but also pat you on the back when you're not willing to do so. Yeah.
So, two feedbacks here on your sharing. One is, I learned that at a very young age that it's what you don't do or you don't say that people will never find out. Mm-hmm. Right? So by saying that, I want to say the truth will always come out. So if she, in fact, she's a liar, she will be recognized as such
Yeah.
at the proper time.
Yeah.
So do not be concerned with that.
Yeah. And even with all that story,
Yeah.
and kind of why I bring that whole story, it always comes back to me. And like, one, how I initially responded to the first conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Two, why did I even give a shit?
I mean, at the end of the day, you understand this, Jacob. Like, the people who will buy onto that story will do so conveniently.
Like I did. Like
yes,
I
we will do it.
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
Conveniently.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. So because someone else will be like, okay, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. However, I'm not going to be poisoned by your idea of this person. Mm-hmm. If and when I'm going to find out, I'm going to do that with my own clear, blank slate, right? So do not be concerned. Whatever's going to buy into that, it's because it's convenient to them at that time. The second part is we're going to fall short. It's clear. Regardless of how much work we have done, and how much work we have ahead of us, and the tool that we possess or lack of, there are times that we're going to come short. There are times we're going to fail. We're going to fail ourselves. We're going to fail others. But as long we set the intention of doing the best we can, when we do fall short, feel what you need to feel, but give yourself some grace. And the only thing you are in control of is what you do the next day. So when you fall short, feel the guilt, feel the shame, feel whatever arises. Then give yourself some grace and set the intention for the next day to do better. That's all you are in control of. So that's how.
That's it. Yeah, we'll leave you with that. And again, if you need a little bit of a support system, again, those pats in the back when you're unwilling to give it to yourself, as well as to be called out when you could be doing a little more. Reach out to either one of us. Head on over to warriorlab.coach and fill out any inquiry if you do need to chat with anybody, and we'll get in touch with you. But until next time, follow me along, _Saldana at Instagram.
Or Strength Philosopher on Instagram.
And we'll see you guys next time.